All right, here we go. Here are my March Madness takes here. It is Monday, so these can change. First of all the one seeds are winning. That includes Alabama. This Maryland West Virginia game, Maryland doesn't know how to win on the road, so I'm taking West Virginia. Right, two pretty evenly matched teams, but Maryland doesn't know how to win on the road. If this game was like closer to Maryland geographically, I'd consider taking them, but like West Virginia, the San Diego State Charleston game is getting a lot of hype. I just think San Diego State's underrated. And Charleston's a good team. They were ranked for a week or two. But San Diego State, I think the 5 seed is a little underseeded for them, so I'm taking them. Virginia Furman, I think Virginia is not a top 25 team. I think they should be like a 7 or an 8 seed. Um, Furman's not great either, but I just think Virginia's so overrated. Um, they lost to UMBC, so like they're susceptible with their play style to losing to these lower seeded teams. So I'm taking Furman. Creighton, NC State. I don't like NC State. I think the ACC is bad this year. They do perform well in the tournament though, which is something to consider. But I'm taking Creighton. I think Creighton is underseeded as well. Nothing to talk about this game. Missouri, Utah State. Utah State's like a top 20 Ken Palm team. I think they're criminally underseeded. I like Missouri too. I think Missouri is about the 25th best team, in my opinion. I think a 7 seed is fair for them. But I just see Utah State in the Mountain West coming through for that game. 2 versus 15. Princeton is not the best team in the Ivy League. And Arizona with Tubelis and Valo and Chris are like a bunch of dogs. Something to say here. Iowa Auburn. Having watched Iowa play, they are never out of the game. And because they play so fast paced and such high tempo, no lead is safe against them, which is why when you kind of have two even teams, I think if Iowa's winning, they can put the game away, but if Auburn's winning, Iowa can swing the game a little bit. People talked about the location of this game. Now it's in Birmingham. It's in Alabama, so it might be like a home game, but there are also just going to be Alabama fans that show up just to boo them. So I think people are overstating the home field advantage that Auburn gets. That is a noteworthy thing, and I think this is a true toss-up game, and it might be a little Big Ten bias, but I'm taking Iowa. Miami and Drake. Miami, one of their best players is injured, and they're an ACC team, and I think they're a little overseeded. So we're gonna give the nod to Drake here. 5-12 popular matchup. Right, their BPI ranks bad. And they're facing an injury, and it's already pretty close. So I'm taking Drake there. Indiana, Kent State. I'm going to be bold here and take Indiana. There's been a lot of talk about Kent State, and Kent State is a deadly team. I just think Trace is so good and such a great playmaker, and they have 3-point shooters to back him up that I'm taking Indiana here. I would take Kent State over Virginia. Tennessee, I might take him over UConn, probably not. But I think Kent State, this is a very winnable game for Kent State, and probably against the third best 4 seed. So I would not be surprised with this game. Iowa State versus Mississippi State and Pitt. I don't like Mississippi State a lot. I do like Pitt though. As much as I don't like the ACC, I think Pitt's really good. So this might be one that changes depending on how this first game goes. It's noteworthy that these first 4 teams are deadly because they're at large bids and they also have a game of March Madness under their belt. And I think Iowa State's just fine. So we're going to go the winner of this game, just depending on how this game goes. Regardless, I'm taking Xavier over them. So it's just one game, doesn't matter a whole lot. So yeah, Kennesaw State, nothing there. Xavier's really strong offensive team. Texas A&M Penn State. This is the game I'm most excited for in the first round. I think both these teams are criminally underseeded. I think Texas A&M might be the hottest team in the country and should be at a 4 or 5 seed. And Penn State, they had a nice run in the Big Ten tournament. I think they should be like an 8 or a 9. Jalen Pinkett, the way he plays offense and like just runs the Penn State offense is really good. He just backs them down from half court, gets to the block, and then he's either has an open close range shot, or he can dish it out to Lundy and Winters and the whole host of 3-point shooters on their team. With that being said, I like Texas A&M. I think they're just so hot and they can back it up, whereas I think Penn State's going to fizzle out a little bit. Texas and Colgate. Texas is a strong team, probably the best team in the Big 12. just had a great season overall. Colgate is a team of deadly shooters. They're shooting over 40% from three as a team, have one of the best true shooting percentages, which is why it's brewing for an upset, and I'm taking Colgate here. Um, Colgate is one of those teams where they're going to live by the three and die by the three. A very high variance team, and when you get into March Madness, right? If Colgate, starts and they make, 7 of their first 11 3-point shots, like that's tough to beat, and that can happen. So I'm taking Colgate. Purdue, one seed's gonna win. Especially like the playing game too. Memphis FAU. This is probably the game I'm second most excited for in the first round. FAU's has just had a really good season. And Memphis is coming off a win over Houston in the American tournament. I also think it's worth noting that Memphis narrowly lost to Houston the 2 other games in the regular season, like by 2 points and then by another close game. So I think Memphis is underseeded. I think FAU is also underseeded, but I see Memphis taking it. To Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts is also a deadly team. They have a transfer from like a good Power 5 school that's a senior. They play this pick and pop game where their center is a 3-point shooter and their point guard is deadly as well. But I'm going to be bold and I'm going to take Duke here. Duke's been hot in the ACC, and I think they can just overcome this deadly duo from Oral Roberts. Tennessee, Louisiana. I've liked Tennessee all year. Don't know much about Louisiana, but I see Tennessee making it through this game. Kentucky, Providence. I'm not a big fan of Kentucky, and I do think the Big East is really good. This is a game I've gone back and forth on because I see both ends of this happening. I'm going to take Providence. This game I can really see going either way, but Kentucky, recently they haven't been able to get their like freshmen going. And that's, when Kentucky, when you have a whole bunch of one and done guys, you need to get your freshmen going. And I don't think they're quite there yet. Kansas State over Montana State. Montana State is probably the best 14 seed in the tournament. But I just like Kansas State. Michigan State, USC. I have no idea who's going to win this game. But I'm going to take tournament Izzo, Izzo and March over a pretty good USC team. Marquette, I think, is deadly, a really good team from the Big East. Kansas, Arkansas, Illinois. This is going to be another one of the most exciting games in the first round. Illinois is an insanely streaky team. That game versus Northwestern where both teams just went on these crazy runs. Illinois is capable of going far in the tournament. And then Arkansas is just a solid team from the SEC. That's also explosive. That being said, I'm going to go with Arkansas. I just don't think Illinois is going to come through in this first game. St. Mary's, VCU. Teams have similar play styles. The freshman guard from St. Mary's is just a dog, and I think the West Coast Conference is underrated. So I'm taking St. Mary's here. UConn, Iona. Iona is another good 13 seed with Pitino. I think they're another like team that could be dangerous. That being said, I think UConn's just criminally underseeded. They should be a 2 or a 3. They started off the season really hot, then had a rough skid, and now they're back to being really hot. And so I think they're better than their record says just because they're coming off of a great run. So I'm taking UConn. TCU and Arizona State, Nevada. I go back and forth with Arizona State. I do have a little Pac-12 bias, and if Arizona State didn't hit that lucky buzzer beater against Arizona, they wouldn't be in the first 4, and I don't think Nevada's anything special. And TCU's like fine. They're a fine team from the Big 12. So don't really like any of these teams, but I'm going to pick TCU. Gonzaga, Grand Canyon. Gonzaga, Drew Timme's still there, coming to effect. Gonzaga's a good team. Northwestern, Boise State. This is another game. I think both these teams aren't great. The backcourt of Northwestern's deadly, and that's big from going, having a tournament run. I do think the Mountain West is good though. But at the end of the day, I just got to go with my Wildcats. UNC Asheville is a little scary. I think they're the second best 15 seed by a large margin. And UCLA is dealing with an injury of Jalen Clark, but I'm still going to go UCLA. Here you go. I think Alabama skirts through West Virginia. Despite the controversy, Brandon Miller has just shown out, and I think he's going to live up to the stage. So I like Alabama a lot here. San Diego State, Furman. I think San Diego State's criminally underrated. So I got to go with them. And then Creighton, Baylor. I like Creighton. I like the Big East, and Baylor like lost to Iowa State. They're on a little bit of a skid recently, so I'm picking Creighton. Utah State, Arizona. I go back and forth in this game. I just think Tubelis and Ballo are too good, and are they're not going to be stopped. Rounding out here, I think this is going to be another good game, but I think Alabama is just going to live up to how they've been playing. The number one seed overall, taking them. And same with Arizona. I think Arizona has a tough path. Utah State's deadly. I think Creighton's deadly. Baylor, if they get it going, is a really good team. But I see them making it. Here you go. Houston, Iowa. I think Houston's just too good. They had a starter out against Memphis in the championship game, but I think he's going to be healthy and good to go. He's had, a week and a half of rest. So I'm liking Houston. This is another deadly matchup. I think Indiana has, a tough route, and I don't think they're 4 seed good. But I think Trace pulls through and they win this game. Here, regardless of what happens this game, I just like Xavier. They're a deadly offensive team. They're explosive. So I'm picking them. Texas A&M and Colgate. I think this is where the Colgate Cinderella story is going to end. I think Texas A&M is just too good. If this was a different 7 seed, right? I'm taking Colgate over Utah State. I'd take them over Northwestern. I'd take them over Michigan State. But I think Texas A&M is just too good. So I'm taking Texas A&M. Rounded it out here, Houston, Indiana. Houston's just head and shoulders above everybody else in the tournament. So I'm picking them. And then Xavier, Texas A&M. I'm actually going to take Texas A&M. I think they've been hot and they're going to stay hot. And I think they can expose, maybe some holes in Xavier's defense and go far. Rounded out here, Alabama and Houston. They're just clearly the two best teams. And I think Alabama's been thriving under the controversy, and Houston's going to get their starter back. And just, all the efficiency matrices have them being the two best teams. Purdue, Memphis. This is a really scary game for Purdue. Purdue has choked in the tournament the last few years. And Memphis is a deadly team. They just beat Houston. So Memphis can go toe to toe with anybody. And Purdue's really good. And I also think there's going to be a 1 seed that fails to make it out of the first weekend. And I think out of anyone, it's going to be Purdue. So I'm taking Memphis. Duke, Tennessee. I really like both of these teams. And it's worth noting, like, Oral Roberts is going to be a tough game for Duke. But I see Duke coming through despite the matrices really in, like, all the stats like in Tennessee. I'm going to take Duke here. Providence, Kansas State. I think Kansas State is a little overseeded. But I think Providence is overstaying their welcome here. So I'm going to take Kansas State. Michigan State, Marquette. I think Marquette's a really deadly team. And Michigan State, they haven't really done much all year. They're just kind of an average Big Ten team that is getting, 7, 8, 9 seed in the tournament. Maybe Tom Izzo can work his magic. I could see Michigan State winning these 2 games, but I'm going to take Marquette. Memphis, Duke is going to be a deadly game, and Duke has an extremely tough route. Oral Roberts is a good team. Tennessee's a really good team. Purdue/Memphis is a really good team. But I see Duke come through and winning here. And then Kansas State, Marquette. I'm not a big fan of Kansas State. I think Marquette's just too good. Best team in the Big East, potentially, if not top 2. So I see them advancing. And then from here, I'm taking Marquette. Kansas, Arkansas. Kansas is just good. Bill Self has had some issues with his health recently. But I think they'll be able to battle off and beat this 8 seed. St. Mary's, UConn. I really like both these teams. I wish they were not together in this same quadrant, because I'd like to pick both these teams to win this game. That being said, UConn is just so hot right now, and I think they're underseeded. And like a freshman guard, I don't know if he'll be able to stand up to the pressure of such a high intensity game. So I'm taking UConn. TCU, Gonzaga. I don't really like TCU, as I stated before, so I'm taking Gonzaga. UCLA, Northwestern. UCLA is one of the top teams in the country. UCLA barely lost to Arizona without 2 of their starters, and Adem is coming back. And with their 2 backup centers fouling out of the game too, against Ballo and Tubelis. Like, that's painted perfectly for Arizona to win, and they barely scraped by. UCLA had a chance at the buzzer to win it. So I'm picking UCLA. It's just stated before, it's like, this is a repeat matchup, and there might be some PTSD from UCLA fans, what happened a couple of years ago. But, different team, different story. UCLA is just so strong, and they're so deep too. So despite Jalen Clark being out, for the rest of this season and maybe some of next season. I'm still taking UCLA. Kansas, UConn. I just see UConn winning this game. I think UConn is extremely hot. Big East team. Big East is a really good basketball conference. So I see them scraping by. And then this game I go back and forth on. I do cheer and root for UCLA. But I think this is when not having Jaylen Clark's really going to hurt you. And not just for his defense, but you also gel together with your team and you're used to having certain guys on the court. I think, a healthy UCLA is a championship contender and might win it all. But I think this is kind of when that injury is going to matter. So I'm taking UConn. Here in the Final Four. And as I said before, I think Houston and Alabama are too good and they're head and shoulders beyond the competition. So if that starter in Houston, is playing at 100%, I don't think a team in the country can beat him. Final score will do 68-62 as is tradition. And yeah, those are my picks for March Madness. Couple bold picks, a little bit chalky. No double-digit teams in the Sweet 16. Teams to look out for that I think could make a deep run that I personally didn't choose. I think Utah State can go far. I don't really see anybody else here going super far. In the Midwest, I think Texas A&M and Penn State can both go extremely far. And Texas. I think one of these three teams is going to make the Elite Eight, if not the Final Four. And so it's a shame that they're all paired up with each other. If Texas A&M got the 6th seed, then they'd be here, and Penn State or Texas would be here. Colgate, if they win one game, why can't they win two? So Colgate has potential, and of course, Kent State is deadly. If that dynamic duo of them pans out, they can also go far. So the Midwest is dangerous. The East is wide open. Honestly, 1 through 9 and Oral Roberts, there's 10 teams that can make the Final Four from the East. I don't know what to make of the East. This is just a criminal matchup to have in the first round. And then Michigan State, you got Tom Izzo and Marquette's second best team in the Big East. Kansas State is a strong Big 12 team. Kentucky, you can never count them out. And then Tennessee and Duke are both extremely talented teams. If this name wasn't Purdue, I think I'd have them in the Final Four. But it's they couldn't make it there with Jaden Ivey and Zach Edey last year. So with just Zach Edey, I don't know how far they can make it. In the West, I'm worried about this game. I think UNC Asheville has a chance to upset. Beyond that, I think UConn and St. Mary's are the teams that can make a run. Iona too. This is going to be a fun game to watch too. So Iona could sneak this out, but I think the West is fairly contained and is one of the sides of the bracket that I'm more confident about. That being said, this is my March Madness pool. So I hope you enjoyed, and maybe you'll snag some of these picks as your own when you're filling out your bracket.